She broke records. She broke attendance numbers. She broke the internet. The records, the numbers, the internet, all from one player, Caitlin Clark. But here's the question nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to ask out loud. Will the league she saved even be there for her next season? To understand where we are right now, you have to understand where the WNBA was before Caitlin Clark. And I don't mean that as a disrespect. I mean it as cold, hard context. The WNBA was founded in 1996. Almost 30 years of basketball, 30 years of incredible athletes, 30 years of championships, rivalries, dynasties, Lisa Leslie, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Brianna For days, Caitlin Clark didn't just move the needle. She snapped the needle off and threw it across the room. And here is the thing that people underestimate about that. It wasn't just about her. Her presence made every team she played against more interesting. The rivalries got more intense, the storylines got bigger. Players who'd been in the league for years suddenly had the spotlight they always deserved. A rising tide lifted all boats. The WNBA became must-see television, and Caitlin Clark was the reason people tuned in for the first time and stayed forever. But here is where it gets complicated. And this is the part of the video where I need you to really pay attention. Because when one player is carrying that much of the weight, that's not just a good thing. That is a pressure cooker. Think about what that actually means structurally. Television executives are building broadcast schedules around her availability. Sponsors are signing league-wide deals with her face quietly in the back of their minds. Expansion franchises are using her star power as a selling point to new markets. The entire financial architecture of the WNBA's 2025 boom has Caitlin Clark's fingerprints all over it. So what happens when her rookie contract ends and negotiations get real? What happens when the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, needs to be renegotiated and players want salaries that actually reflect the revenue they are generating? What happens when Caitlin Clark looks at her contract, looks at the television deals her games are fueling and says, asterisk, I want what I am worth? Because she would be right to say that. She would be absolutely right. And that's exactly the kind of moment that can turn a feel-good story into a work stoppage. What happens when the business gets ugly? Asterisk. Here is the thing most sports analysts gloss over when they talk about the WNBA's bright future. This league has been on the edge before, multiple times. The league contracted teams in the early 2000s, just folded them. Cities that had passionate fan bases woke up one day and their team was gone. The Houston Comets, the franchise that won the first 4 WNBA championships, folded in 2008. Gone. For years, the WNBA's survival wasn't guaranteed. It operated on a financial model that worked largely because the NBA was willing to absorb losses. It was a passion project as much as it was a business. And every time the league got momentum, every time it felt like the tide was turning, something would happen. A labor dispute, a team folding, a television deal falling through. The bubble would get so close to breaking through, and then just not. So when people say the WNBA is fine, it's never been better, I believe them. I really do. But I also remember the history. And history has a way of reminding you that nothing is guaranteed. Let's talk about the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, because this is the thing that could actually determine whether Caitlin Clark tips off a 2026 season or spends the summer watching everything she built sit on pause. The players in the league have to agree on how to split the money. Salaries, benefits, travel conditions, maternity policies, all of it gets hammered out at the negotiating table. And here's the brutal reality. WNBA players have historically been underpaid relative to the revenue they generate. The new media deals change the math significantly. There is now real money on the table, which means the players are going to come to those negotiations with a completely different energy than they ever have before. They are going to want their cut. They deserve their cut. But ownership groups, even the shiny new ones with deep pockets, don't write big checks without a fight. That's just how sports business works. If those negotiations drag, if they break down, if pride gets in the way of progress, you are looking at a potential lockout, a delayed season, or worst case, a canceled one. And if that happens in 2026, the year after the WNBA had its biggest cultural moment ever, the fallout wouldn't just be bad, it would be catastrophic. The casual fans who just found the league? Gone. The sponsors? Nervous. The momentum that took decades to build? Evaporated asterisk. There are smart people in that league office. There are players on the union side who understand exactly what's at stake. Everyone in that building knows that a work stoppage right now would be like finally finding gold and then dropping it into the ocean. Nobody wants that. The hope, and it's a real hope, is that both sides recognize this moment for what it is. A once-in-a-generation opportunity, a window that doesn't stay open forever. And you have to believe that Caitlin Clark's presence in those conversations, even indirectly, changes the calculus. Because she isn't just a player anymore. She is a billion-dollar brand walking around in a fever jersey. And everyone at that table knows it. That kind of leverage? That's new for the WNBA. That's genuinely historically new. Let's zoom out for a second. Because T here is another layer to this story that goes beyond contracts and television deals. Caitlin Clark changed what young girls think is possible. I don't say that to be sentimental. I say that because it has real long-term structural consequences for the sport. When millions of little girls watch Caitlin Clark hit a step-back three from the logo and hear an entire arena erupt, they don't just see a basketball player. They see a future. They see themselves. And that pipeline, that generation of kids who are now obsessed with basketball because of what they watched in 2024 and 2025, that is the WNBA's most valuable long-term asset. More valuable than any television deal, more valuable than any expansion team. But pipelines take time. And if the league stumbles in 2026, if the product gets disrupted right at the peak of its cultural influence, you risk losing that generation before they ever become ticket buyers. The stakes aren't just about this season. The stakes are about the next 20 years of women's basketball. Okay, I've been heavy. Let me give you the other side because it's real and it's important. The WNBA has never, and I mean never, been better positioned than it is right now. On Pokerbo, expansion money is happening in markets that were previously untapped. The Golden State Valkyries just played their first season. More cities are lining up. The media rights deals struck in recent years dwarf anything the league has seen before. We're talking about a completely different financial reality than what existed even 5 years ago. And the league's leadership? They are not asleep. They have watched what happened with Caitlin Clark, and they understand deeply that they cannot fumble this. The WNBA in 2026 isn't the WNBA of 2010 or even 2020. It is bigger, it is richer, and it is culturally embedded in a way it has never been before. That doesn't make it bulletproof, but it makes it a whole lot harder to kill. And then T here is Caitlin Clark, the actual human being at the center of all of this. Let's not forget, she's been through the fire already. She handled the pressure of being the most hyped rookie in WNBA history. She handled the controversies, the critics, the cheap shots, literally and figuratively. She handled the scrutiny of every single move she made both on and off the court. And she didn't just survive it, she thrived. Caitlin Clark is not someone who shrinks under a spotlight. She is someone who was built for the spotlight, who plays her best basketball when the moment is the biggest. If the WNBA gives her a stage in 2026, she will burn it down in the best possible way. The question was never whether she's ready for the league. The question is whether the league is ready for her. And after everything we've seen, after every sold-out arena, every record-breaking ratings night, every viral moment that had the entire country talking about women's basketball, I think the answer is finally, yes. So, will Caitlin Clark have a WNBA in 2026? The honest answer is almost certainly yes. But almost certainly in professional sports is never a fairy tale ending. It's a cliffhanger. The WNBA stands at the most important crossroads in its nearly 30-year history. More popular than ever. More money than ever. More eyes, more voices, more momentum than ever before, and more pressure than ever to get it right. Because if they get it right, if the CBA gets done fairly, if the owners invest like they promised, if the league infrastructure holds up under the weight of its own explosion, then 2026 isn't just another season. It's the beginning of a new era. An era where women's basketball isn't fighting for a seat at the table anymore. It is the table. But if they blow it, if the greed wins, if the negotiations collapse, if the momentum gets choked out by the very people who are supposed to protect it, then the story of the greatest moment in WNBA history won't be remembered as a triumph. It'll be remembered as a warning, a cautionary tale about what happens when a league finally gets everything it ever wanted and still found a way to lose it. Caitlin Clark gave this league a second life. What the WNBA does with that life, that's on them. Long pause. Music swells. The ball is in the WNBA's court now, and the whole world is watching. And the whole world is watching